Have you ever looked at a woodworking tool and thought there is no way? Well, I had the same reaction. So instead of buying them, I built my own versions using mostly leftover materials from my workshop. The challenge? Build it to match the ease of use and the precision of the original, and maybe even improve on the design. Let's see if a DIY solution can hold its own against tools that cost over 10 times as much. Alright, confession time, I actually bought the real gripper from Microchip. But honestly, I've always felt safest on the table saw with this gripper. The only catch, at over 180 kangaroos. It's a steep price for a push block for the table saw. And if you cut into it, it really hurts. So yeah, because I like it so much, I decided my DIY version should be similar dimensions than this one. First up, measurements. And as luck would have it, the width lined up perfectly with two 2x4s glued together. Sometimes woodworking just works out like that. So I grabbed an offcut that I had lying around, I ran it through the table saw, cleaned it up and glued two pieces together. And we had a perfect blank for the body of the push block. Next up, the handle. I found this dowel rolling around in the shop. I have no idea which project that was from, but when I grabbed it, it kind of felt alright in my hand, so this is gonna be our handle. To mount it, I cut a couple of little L brackets from some foam ply scrap, drilled a hole with a Forstner bit and screwed them into the body. Simple, strong and comfortable. And that's the key. If you have a good grip, you can push through your stock confidently without that awkward half grip hesitation. Again, right tool for the right job. Like the original gripper, I cut big chamfers on both ends of the body. These aren't just for looks. The back chamfer makes it easy to kick the workpiece once you're done with your cut behind the blade, and the front chamfer stops the block from splitting out when the blade comes through. Quick cleanup with the block plane and suddenly it starts looking like it could be something. So obviously the push block needs some grip underneath. So for grip, I stuck on some non-slip pad I had. Now I've got to be honest here. I've tried this pad and I'm not a huge fan. It's a bit soft and not as grippy as I'd like it to be. But I won't spoil too much yet. Let's just say I've gone through many iterations of this push block and I've got some crucial improvements that I share a little later in this video. So here's the part that really makes the gripper unique. The adjustable support bracket. And yeah, my version needs to have this too. Now, technically the jigsaw was the right tool for this job, but let's be honest, I don't use mine very often and it shows. My jigsaw skills are about as good as my singing. Don't worry, I'm not gonna sing. I started by cutting out the shape of the bracket, then used it as a template to line everything to the body. I clamped it onto my block and drilled a clean 5mm hole through both pieces so my M5 star knobs would be perfectly aligned. Then I drilled two oversized holes on each side of the bracket and connected them with the jigsaw to make the slots. And once again, the cuts weren't exactly pretty. Stop judging. But it worked. After a quick sanding session, mostly so the edges wouldn't rip up my dainty hands, it was looking okay-ish. After wrestling with those jigsaw cut slots, I had to admit, the thing worked. But it felt a little clunky. Definitely not close to the ergonomics of the real gripper. That's when I remembered, sometimes the right tool for the job is not even in my workshop at all. This one is sitting in my office. My Bundel A1 3D printer. And no, Bundel didn't sponsor this video. So I ditched the plywood version, pulled up Fusion and quickly modeled the support bracket. While I was at it, I also found a nice ergonomic handle design online. Can't remember where I found it, but I printed that one too. And honestly, this changed everything. The movement was much smoother, the handle felt natural and the whole thing just worked so much better. So I've been testing this push stick for a couple of weeks now and I've done a ton of improvements on it. I will show you a little bit later in the video, but I'll say this. Even with my mostly leftover materials, this DIY version feels every bit as safe and convenient as the store-bought one. And remember, using the right tool isn't just about fancy gear. It's about speed, safety and confidence in every cut. And if you don't want to spend $200 on a push block, but still want something like this, I might actually offer a build kit for this exact push block. If you want to support me, I'll have that linked below, but don't go there yet or you will spoil the surprise of all the improvements I made on this push block. Alright, the next tool is not quite as exciting as the push block, but stick with me here because I think that's exactly why it gets overlooked all the time. It's underutilized, hasn't really gotten the attention it deserves, and honestly, it could be way better. All the right angle clamps I've used before are incredibly cumbersome. And since I will be cranking out a ton of cabinet boxes for my shop, like here, or here, or here, or even here, I need something to keep them square. When I looked online, the only real options were the Woodpacker's box clamps or their Clamping Square Plus. And Woodpacker's means one thing: expensive. So that was out. So the easiest way to make a right angle clamp is with an MDF offcut. Just cut a perfect square. Then halve it into 2 triangles and drill some holes with a Forstner bit. Done. Honestly, that literally took me 5 minutes. Less than that. Now, if you're less sloppy than me, you could actually take the time and center the holes properly. But hey, for this version, it still works. The only downside is you still need to use your own clamps. So let's see if we can improve it. I wanted something that didn't need extra clamps. This was also super simple. I grabbed another 2x4 offcut, drilled 2 holes in each half, roughly centered with a 6mm bit, then cut the block in half on the table saw. After that, I glued both halves onto my pre-cut MDF triangle. The trick here is to center them as best as possible and line them up flush with the edge. Next, I added another pine offcut across the long side. I drilled 2 holes, again with the 6mm bit, and brought it together with an M5 bolt and a star knob. Voila, which means now it's finished or something. A self-clamping right angle jig. Technically it's not self-clamping, but you don't need extra clamps anymore, which makes it a lot more convenient. And if you actually take the time to align all the pine blocks properly, they can double up as little feet. That way you can flip your project upside down and it stands there while you work. Not bad at all, if I can say so myself. But you should know me by now, I couldn't just stop there. Since I've got the 3D printer and I'm trying to improve my design skills, I sat down and modeled what I thought would be the perfect right angle clamp. And after only one try, okay, maybe more than one try, I got there. This design has a couple of features I really like. First, a lip that runs the whole way along one side of the clamps. That keeps your workpiece perfectly level with each other. Second, I added some feet so the whole thing can stand on its own on your workbench while you're still able to turn your star knob. And to stop the whole thing from tipping over, I even made some little support blocks. Just simple but really effective. Not sure why it took me so long to dial this design in, but I think it was absolutely worth it. So yeah, maybe not the flashiest jig, but definitely one of the most useful ones. Let me know in the comments below if you think I over-engineered that a little bit and it wasn't really worth it. Alright, the next one is pretty exciting. A circle cutting jig for my Makita trim router. And spoiler alert, I really struggled to get this one working properly. Let me walk you through it. I started with a 4-ply offcut and cut it down to a rough rectangle. Nothing precise here, just roughed it out because as usual I'm kind of winging it as I go. I left it a little bigger than I think the final dimension should be. Once I chucked in a 6mm upcut spiral bit and cut a slot straight through the ply in 2 passes. This came out really clean. Those spiral bits always make you look like you know what you're doing. Then I swapped to a cheap, wider bit I had lying around. Honestly, this thing was so blunt it probably belonged in the bin, but I figured, let's wing it. I cut a shallower groove halfway through the ply, right over the spiral groove, without moving the edge guide. It wasn't smooth, but it gave me that wider channel I needed. So now the base plate was done. Rough cut, not pretty, and enough meat to bolt the router to later. Now for the secret sauce, the pivot. I didn't want to have to screw into my workpiece, so I came up with this removable pin system. I cut a little square of 6mm ply, drilled a 6mm hole right in the center. I guess I like 6mm for some reason. And then I pressed in a short length of brass rod. Why brass? Couple of reasons. It's very soft, easy to work with your woodworking tools. And let's be honest, it looks good. Plus, I laminated the little square in black to reduce friction, and who doesn't like black and gold? And yes, I cut the veneer with a chisel. This is what happens if you lose your tools. I glued the brass rod in with epoxy. I make sure it was square to the plate. If this is really off, your circles will not be round. Ask me how I know that. Next up was the sliding block. I made this off camera, thinking it would be a test piece that would work. But weirdly enough, it did. It's just a little 6mm ply piece again, cut to fit in the wider groove. I drilled a hole for the brass rod, inlet an M6 nut and glued it with super glue. Then I used this M6 thumb screw so it could be locked down anywhere along the slot. Super simple. I still had to trim that brass rod to size. Now I slide everything together and test it. Surprise, surprise, it actually worked perfectly. Insane. Now came the tricky part, mounting the router. I traced out the base, pulled off the factory plate, marked the holes and drilled them through the foam ply. After that, I bolted it down and it held pretty solidly. I thought it would be much harder, but it worked. I checked the cutting capacity with this jig and I still had about 2 centimeters depth, which is more than enough. But then I realized I forgot something. The sliding plate adds 6mm, which means I had to shim the router side up to keep it level. That cut my max depth down to about 1.5 centimeters. That should be still hopefully way more than enough. Before testing, I gave the whole jig a quick cleanup, just sanded it down, broke all the edges and made sure nothing was going to catch on the router or my dainty hands. It wasn't a beauty contest, but it felt decent in the hand and ready to try out. I set the circle size, stuck the jig down with some 3M double-sided tape, and seriously, am I the only one who can never peel that stuff off cleanly? It drives me mental. And now finally went for the first cut. Now here's the good part. The circle itself looked fantastic. Clean, smooth edges, no chatter at all. But almost immediately the issue starts to show. The router cord and the shop vac hose kept twisting around each other. And because of that, the whole jig felt awkward to control. Instead of focusing on the cut, it was constantly fighting the cables and the shop vac. So I thought about it and the fix was obvious. Drill a 2 cm hole right at the router mount, perfectly centered. Then I went, surprise, surprise, to my 3D printer again. Modeled a spinning plate, hit print, and while I was at it, I also redesigned the way the router mounts too. Please ignore the print quality on this one. I printed it really fast just to test it, but wow. What a difference. With the spin plate in place, the whole jig suddenly felt like it was running on rails. The router glided around the pivot point smoothly, no binding, no dragging. That twisting hose and power cord problem, gone. Instead of wrestling everything around, it just spun smoothly in a clean motion. Exactly how you want the circle cutting jig to behave. Now here's where I have to be honest about this jig. My whole goal with these builds was to come up with something anyone could make. Something affordable, accessible and usable for every woodworker. And in a way I failed with this one. I even came up with a fully 3D printed version. And it works well for me. I completely over-engineered it. I added bearings for the spinning action, redesigned the mounting system, and it runs smooth as anything. But the truth is, it only works perfectly with my Makita trim rod. That means it's not really a universal solution. The Rockler version, for example, isn't just more polished, it also fits way more routers. It's not quite the one-size-fits-all jig I was aiming for. So after all that, here's where I landed. I won't be putting a physical version of this router jig up on my website. It just isn't universal enough yet. But what I will do is make all these files available for you, along with plans in a bundle with all the other products as well. That way, if you want to give it a try yourself, you've got everything you need. And who knows, maybe someone out there will take these ideas and come up with an even better solution. Let me know in the comments below though if you actually be interested in the physical router jig. If enough people want one, I'll see if I can come up with a universal mounting system that works across more routers. Alright, so I promised you in the beginning that I'd show you all the improvements I made to this DIY push stick. And here they are. First upgrade, threaded inserts. I used them for the star knobs. That tiny change made a huge difference. Now the support brackets are just way smoother and you don't get that crunchy feeling of a bolt biting into wood. Second upgrade, I ditched that soft non-slip pad and replaced it with this stuff called cat tongue tape. And let me tell you, this stuff is insane. It's incredibly grippy, and because it's a tape and not a spongy pad, it doesn't squish under pressure. That means your workpiece stays flat and steady as you push it through the table saw. No tipping, no slipping. Just a solid, confident feed. Honestly, this tape might be my new favorite thing. And the biggest upgrade? The handle. The version I landed on completely changed how this thing feels in use. It gives you way more control over the workpiece and it's so much more comfortable. Compared to the gripper, I actually like this handle design much more. The DIY version is also way more grippy. The only thing I have to mention is because of the pine blocks, this version is a little heavier than the gripper, but honestly, I'll take that trade-off because at least you don't need to stress about chewing into a $200 tool, which I've definitely done more than once. So that's it. 3 jigs that would have cost $500 if I bought them. Built first with leftover materials and then improved with some 3D printing. Each one taught me something new and hopefully gave you a few ideas for your own job. If you're interested and want to support me and this channel, check out the physical products I have linked below or grab the bundle of 3D print files, including plans if you want to make your own. Now, if you're like me and always strive for the next workshop upgrade, I have linked the only DIY height adjustable router flattening jig here. And as always, I appreciate you and I see you next time.